a project called We Choose the Moon, and it was a live, 40 years later, recreation of the mission to the moon done online. And on July 16th, 2009 at 9:50-something a.m., that rocket right there took off in virtual space, of course. And while it was flying, you could watch it travel through space, and you could see photos that were related to the mission, and you could actually hear the astronauts speaking to one another. We rebroadcasted all that audio from Houston and the astronauts, so you could sort of see that in real time as it happened, and look at photos as you go. And then the trip takes 4 days, and we don't expect people to sit and look at a website for 4 days, but as you check in, you can see the stages evolve, and it'll kind of get you up to speed. And finally, the Eagle landed on the moon, and it was a really cool way to kind of take history and bring it to life for a new audience. We actually we had this notion to rebroadcast the audio, so we called NASA and said, we'd love to play this live. Can we have the audio? And they said, oh, you're in luck. We just digitized it last month. So they dumped a file of MP3s on us, and so we had to queue that up over the course of 4 days, so they played in sync with history. And then they also handed us a PDF of everything that was said between Houston and the astronauts as they went on their mission. And it's a lengthy read, I'll tell you, and but there's a lot of really great moments. So we scoured the thing, and we found 650 or 700 really great pieces of astronaut dialogue. For example, hello there, Earthlings. And we queued them up into a Twitter feed so that you could follow Capcom, and you could follow Eagle, and you could follow Michael Collins, who just orbited the moon while waiting for those guys to have their historic walk on Twitter. And so it was just kind of another way to follow the experience, even if you're not on the website exactly or listening to the audio. There is, again, hello there, Earthlings. And then finally, when you landed, I had this kind of a weird experience when I was a kid. I don't know why it sticks with me, but we all went to go to a fire station. And when we left the fire station, we got a certificate saying that we visited, and there was a bunch of things like I saw the fire helmet, I saw the fireman's pole, I saw the fire axe, whatever. And they had checked all the boxes. And I remember riding home on the bus with some sort of indignation, like, I didn't see a fire axe, and I got kind of upset, and it says that the box was checked, and I saw it, and it made me kind of angry. Anyway, it inspired a little certificate that you can download after you've seen the mission to the moon that says, I saw the CSM separate from the LM, and I landed on the moon. I'm going to go to the JFK library someday. And teachers can print this out and give it to their classes as part of curriculum, that kind of thing. So it's just kind of a nice add-on. There's a hard deadline to launch something like this. Obviously, it has to happen on the day at the exact right time. And so there were a few sort of nervy moments. I don't know if there's any space enthusiasts out there that can just shout out right now what's wrong with this picture. There's no fire in space. And we just animated it this way. And so we had to change that kind of at the last minute, which was kind of upsetting. And then finally, we had a technical glitch. This is our kind of control room at the agency. On the left there is our producer who organized all those tweets and put the music the audio all in order. And we were out of sync. And so we launched the site, and it's out of sync by 30 seconds. And we're hearing liftoff, and the thing hasn't lifted off yet. And it was just really terrifying. All of that to say that there are so many things, so many parts and pieces that kind of had to go right. It was especially nervy because CNN decided that what we were doing was cool enough that they were going to cut to it live during Wolf Blitzer's Situation Room. And so there was a bit of like, oh, this is really real. This isn't just like whoever happens to see this online. This is like people watching television too. So it caused a little bit of consternation, which was kind of nice. We also got a decent amount of hate mail. This one says, overcapacity. Sort it out, you Muppets. What did you expect? It's really nice. Thanks for dropping the ball so many times. You seriously lead us to believe you didn't foresee the mass of people turning into your site. We hadn't done this before. No one had done this before. So there was a bit of like, we don't know. We've got server space ready to accommodate, but you know, things didn't always go perfectly right. Where are the old NASA engineers now? That one really stings. But then the good letters, honestly, there's just nothing like it. This is an email from a guy who, he says he thinks he's the youngest member of the launch crew of Apollo 11. He was 20 years old in 1969. when he was hired by NASA, and he tells us the story of what it was like to actually be there, which is really great. It means a lot to kind of recreate history that way and impact someone's life. We got a lot of attention. It got visits from 216 countries almost immediately. I think the countries that didn't visit us were the ones that have blocked internet. And now, in sort of an interplay between agency, creative, and the client and so forth, we tweeted out the astronauts' dialogue during this period, and it inspired the Kennedy Library to tweet the entire president's career. You want to talk about that?
Right. We actually our director of communications started a live Twitter site. So it's JFK_. It started in 1960. And every day we tweeted 5 tweets from his campaign. So you could actually feel like you were there, like you were part of it. And it was very exciting. So we had such success with it, and we got so much press and interest that we decided to continue it through the rest of his presidency. So currently we have JFK_1963. And it walks you through it. You get tweeted 5 times a day on different things that happened in the White House at that time or wherever he was. And then we also have probably a more generic site, which is JFK Library. And that's basically just tweeting about the library and things we have going on and events and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit different, but that JFK_1963 will actually end on November 22nd, 2013.
So it's a really cool way. I mean, it's nice to open up your Twitter feed and see that he was heading out for a sandwich and going to play a round of golf, or he was talking to, he was in the Sudan, or whatever it is. It's just a really neat way to bring history to life in a tiny way. And when we heard that the library was going to take this on, it was like, we did 4 days of astronaut dialogue, and it was just a monumental thing to get that thing organized and timed right, and the undertaking on their behalf is just stunning.
But the great thing is on our website, if you go to jfklibrary.org, you can access his White House calendar. You can access every single day of it. So for us, we can kind of we can stage everything up ahead of time so that we can actually set it up to tweet it out. So if you do all the work up front and we have access to all the archival material, it's probably a little bit easier for us than for someone on the outside to do it as much.
Right. So we took a cue back from them, and we get a lot of donated print media, which is great. So we made some print ads that lead you back to the Twitter feed. So this is, I don't know if QR codes were ever cool, but they seemed kind of cool at the time, almost 4 years ago. But it's just a national print campaign, and the archival photos of Kennedy, and his speech bubble or thought bubble is just a QR code. And when you scan the QR code, it takes you to the Twitter feed, so you can literally see what he's thinking, or see what he was talking about at the time, which is kind of a fun connection. And there's the feed.
I think you were ahead of the curve on that one, on the QR codes.
But I also think that's kind of what's been cool about what you guys have been able to do, which is the openness to use technology and maybe QR codes. You tried it, but they didn't end up working out. But we choose the moon, and Clouds Over Cuban, some of the other things have worked out, and it's all to tell the story of JFK, which is it's cool to have that opportunity to leverage technology in that way.
Yeah, and We Choose the Moon was a substantial project, but we're not afraid to take small bets too. And there's a bit of like, okay, so Choose the Moon got a lot of attention. How are you going to follow that up? And there's no intention at all to try and duplicate what we've done before, so we just want to try new things. This next one, if I'm honest, was a little bit of a misstep, although the idea is kind of interesting. It was the anniversary of Kennedy's inauguration, and this is the Ask Not What Your Country Can Do For You speech. And the premise is that you go to the site, and you are assigned a chunk of text from the inauguration, and you just retweet it. And what happens is there's a video of him giving the speech, and as he does, it is almost subtitled in a way by tweets from around the world of people retweeting those chunks as it goes. But I think ultimately the design was a little cluttered, and the notion wasn't super clear. There was this ability to add video, and I think in kind of a hangover from our moon project, we sort of tried to do too much, and we wound up putting in a gallery of notes and stuff. And do you remember this project, Lee?
No, I was telling them, we're like, I don't remember this one.
Yeah, there's a reason why you don't remember it. It wasn't great. It was all right, but I bring it up because I think we learned a little bit from that, and we followed it up a year and a half later with a project called One Small Tweet, and one of the creators of that is right here in front. Raise your hand. Don't want to? Okay. And this was a commemorative piece for the passing of Neil Armstrong. And the premise here is really simple. Tweet with the hashtag one small tweet, and we will add it to a virtual trip to the moon. And so as you go, there are addresses along this line from the Earth to the moon, and each one contains a tweet about how Neil impacted the life of the person tweeting. And I think it was several thousand, wasn't it, tweets that got us there. It wasn't a huge number. You don't want to put it at 250,000 or something and, never get there. But it was just a really touching and simple, nice way. And so again, I show this kind of in contrast to the previous piece because it's a lot crisper and a lot more kind of absorbable as an idea. And then I think we're going to spend a little more time on this one. This is a more recent project. This is something that we did a year ago. And it's the 50th anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And just like any other project for the JFK Library, the first thing we do is research. And so we started researching, and I knew, I wasn't alive during the crisis, but I knew that that we came close to nuclear war, but I didn't know exactly what the details were. I felt like we stood up in the face of communism and made them back down. And so we dug into this, and we realized that we put missiles in Italy and Turkey 3 years before, and it provoked the Russians. And we were invading international airspace that we shouldn't have been, and we have some responsibility here. And okay, that's interesting. And there were so many things that came up, and we just had this kind of massive piles of information. And it was a little bit like, all right, how do we get this into a digestible project where the information is accessible to you at any time that you want, but a lot of it is optional in a way so that you can decide exactly how deep you want to get into it. I'll give you an overview of the shape of the thing, and I'll play a quick video, and then I want Dustin to talk about the technical parts of that. So you come to the site and hit play, and you see a 25-minute piece about the Cuban Missile Crisis starting in 1959 when Castro took power all the way up to the removal of missiles. And then as you go, you can see those little flags in the lower right-hand corner. Related photos, documents, video, pictures, so forth get dropped into a dossier that you can review at any time. So for example, here we're watching Kennedy sign the quarantine into law. I can go read that whole document, 6 pages, if I want to, right then and there. I don't have to Wikipedia that. I don't have to pull out a tablet and distract myself. I can see it right there, which is kind of nice. The videos play in 6 sections, and just like any other video, there's a scrubber bar across the bottom. But to help you keep track of where we are in the history, we demarcated the scrubber bar with dates and times. So you can see that this one takes place over 2 weeks. There was one that takes place over a year, but if you just give a glance down to the scrubber bar, you can see where we're at in history, as it were. Here's a look at the dossier full of photos and videos, which you can kind of peruse at your leisure. And then there was a mobile sync aspect, which Dustin will get more into, where the items from the dossier drop directly onto your mobile using WebSockets, so that I can take that stuff around with me and look at it later if I want. And then in our research, we found so many things we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about the significance of Berlin. We wanted to talk about the superstition of the Russians, but we felt like it would bog down the main documentary too much. So we shot expert interviews, including Sergei Khrushchev, son of Nikita Khrushchev, and Eric Swedin here, who's an alternate history writer. And you can access those when you want to. When Berlin gets discussed really briefly in the main feature, there's a flag that pops up that says, you want to learn more? And you can click on it, and the thing will pause, and you can watch 5 minutes of commentary, or nope, not interested, and the flag just disappears. You keep watching. And then finally, because there were so many moments during the Cuban Missile Crisis where if things had gone just slightly differently, the world would have been in the middle of nuclear war, we wondered what 2012 would look like if war had broken out. So we shot a short film, which I'll let Dustin get more into, but it basically envisions a U.S. and a Cuba 50 years after a nuclear confrontation, and that's kind of a short film that's embedded in the middle of the whole thing. And we'll watch a case film of the whole campaign so you can get a kind of gulp of it right now.
Then all I remember is big flash.
Я выпустил этот военный комплект прямо на Новый Орлеанс.
Everybody we knew was gone.
To remind us just how close we really came to nuclear war, the JFK Presidential Library created Clouds Over Cuba, the interactive documentary commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis follows the developments that led to the crisis, beginning with the 1959 Cuban Revolution led by Fidel Castro, and continuing on until the missiles were removed in October 1962. Along the way, the user is invited to explore 15 related events in greater depth via expert interviews including Sheldon M. Stern, former historian at the JFK Library.
I can remember saying, wow, these tapes, this is going to just blow the roof off so many assumptions.
And Sergei Khrushchev, son of Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev.
That show Americans, if you will attack Cuba, it will be nuclear war.
Topics such as the fear of communism, the Bay of Pigs invasion, and the secret XCOM recordings are all explored in detail from multiple perspectives. As the documentary unfolds, nearly 200 archival photos, videos, documents, and audio recordings are automatically added to a digital dossier for further review at any time. Smartphone users can link their devices with the film so their mobile dossiers sync with the documentary playback. Visitors who wanted to follow the crisis live exactly 50 years later could import all the secret XCOM meetings recorded by Kennedy, letters between JFK and Khrushchev, and other material into their iCal and Google calendars with one click, enabling them to attend the meetings and receive the communications live over the 13 days.
What is going on in Cuba? That is what has got to stop.
The film ultimately builds to an alternate 2012, in which the crisis escalated into nuclear war. This short film tells the intertwining story of 4 fictional characters who each remember the horrors of nuclear war in their own way. The documentary resolves with the legacies of Khrushchev, Castro, and Kennedy, and 50 years later reminds us what would have happened had diplomacy not won out.
What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I just want to make sure everyone knows that the Martin Agency and Tool won 2 Emmy Awards for Clouds Over Cuba just on Tuesday night. So big round of applause for these guys. Thank you.
So that gives you a sense of the size and shape of it all. It's a lot of story to tell, and I'm going to talk about 3 philosophical things really quickly before we get back to the technical stuff. But this project really originally started as a kind of a choose-your-own-adventure thing, and I think probably every one of us in the room at some point has pitched something along those lines. And we were talked out of it by Tool, I think very wisely, and instead we chose to focus on this: a guy watching Care Bears with his laptop open. In all seriousness, the notion of how do I get the idea, the notion of watching a show, having my laptop open, and that interaction into one digestible chunk is something that we spent a lot of time seriously thinking about. And in a sense, it resembles this. And these paths that you see here are called desire lines. And they are, I think we all know them, they are paths cut through where there are no paths laid out for you, either in asphalt or in sidewalks or whatever. And this indicates that someone wants to go there and they're going to ignore where they've been told to go. And we thought a lot about, all right, so if I'm watching this, Kennedy sign this thing into law, I might pick up my tablet and go read this document myself. So instead we put that in there for you. Or I see that Berlin gets mentioned, and there's this really fascinating bit about how after the end of the missile crisis, Kennedy had written Berlin 5 times on his notebook, and so even after the missiles were removed, he's just obsessed. Well, we can put that expert commentary into the piece for you right there, and try to anticipate a little bit what these desire lines might be. You want to talk about tablet and?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the creative and technology process on this project, and talk about the things that went well and some of the things that didn't go so well. And I think first off, it all starts with the creative process and trust. And I think one of the things you were saying is, there was an initial concept to do choose your own adventure, but I think it started with one of our directors. His name's Ben Trigglebank. He has a long-standing relationship with you and Wade and Joe, and just through that creative trust that you guys have, they all work together on We Choose the Moon, and then we're all working together on this project. you guys were very open to each other, to hearing like, hey, let's be honest with each other about changing different things. And I think that then goes into the technology side, which is on over where we are. In order to produce any of this, and from a creative standpoint, we try to make a point of not saying that our design team are the creatives. Everybody is a creative over at our production company. So the producer, the developers, the art directors, the motion designers, they're all a pod working together, and they're all involved in the creative process. And it's the only way that we know how in order to produce a project like this that's going to be experiential, and everybody's going to have a say in how you're going about the user experience or the technology. From a technology standpoint, this was an HTML5 project, had full bleed video. One of the decisions that we always have to make is, are we going to use an open source kind of platform framework, or are we going to use a custom framework? In this scenario, it was a custom framework, and the reason for that is that to do something with this level of craft and the kind of transitions in the animations, it has to be a custom framework because we need the control over the code in order to do the kinds of things that we want to be able to do. So that was kind of one decision that we had to make. Two was, how are we going to treat the different devices? In this scenario, we had it so that tablet and desktop basically mimicked the same experience. But for phone, we decided to use WebSocket technology because our philosophy was, first off, the video screen size and the processing power on a phone, you can't do an interactive video experience like the one that we have. So we looked at the phone as, how are people going to consume this kind of content, and how do people typically use their phone? And it's more from information gathering, and that's why we decided to go down the path of WebSocket technology and allowing people to kind of get all of those documents and things from the dossier to be able to read later on if you're on the subway, on the bus, in bed, whatever it is. One other thing that came with the tablet was, and I guess this starts getting into some of the areas where we maybe started to have to figure out like how we were going to treat things, is one, we had a reactive sound engine in this. So we created a music bed that was baked into an interactive sound engine, which kind of made the music go up and go down based on how you interacted with the site experience. We really wanted that to work on tablet, and iOS 6 had just recently announced that they had a new web audio plugin so that we could play multiple sounds with inside the browser. Well, I think the good news with trying new things with new technology is that you get to try new things. The bad news is that when we went to go try it, it didn't work, and there were still bugs, and there was nobody to talk to. We were trying to look on forums and things like that. So the site launched, and on tablet, it didn't have the audio that we wanted. I don't know if you remember, but we actually had to launch it a couple weeks later. And that was just one of the things that goes with trying new things. It could be in beta, it's just not ready to go, and those are the things that we had to deal with. One other item that we had to deal with, I think it was literally a couple days before we were getting ready to launch. Of course, everybody's going through QA, and we realize this is built for modern browsers, and we realize on IE8, it's just not working the way we want it to. And we had all had conversations about it, but we all had to make a decision, and I think it was smartly, we all decided not to really optimize for IE8 because we basically said we're going to spend 50% of our time finishing polish and bug fixing on trying to get IE8, but when we really look at the audience for this kind of a project, they're not really on IE8, and the penetration levels I think we were looking were so low, it wasn't worth the time investment, and quite honestly, we would have stripped it down so far, it wasn't going to be worth it. So those were some of the kind of decisions we had to make through, from a technology standpoint in order to kind of bring this project to life.
Mm-hmm. Tablet?
Oh yes, and tablets. So as far as tablet goes, it was pretty much the same experience, but one of the fun things was as we were going through it, we had to strip out some animations, but we also just had this idea while we were trying to optimize it for tablet. We also realized, let's use the gyroscope. So on the homepage, you kind of see this flicker of the Capitol building, and you see it kind of in the future in this what-if scenario of if there had been nuclear war. And actually, if you see it on iPad, you use your gyroscope, and that's what makes it change, whereas on the desktop, it just kind of flickers on its own. And I think it's those little nuggets that you explore as you're just going through it, and as long as everybody has the opportunity to kind of be flexible with the process, you're going to uncover those little things. We never planned that out at the beginning, but we decided that as we were going through and kind of, pretty late in the process.
dossier here, as it pops up, was inspired by the Legend of Zelda inventory system. True story. We talked a bit about mobile sync. I think we're getting a little tight on time. I want to play one more video for you. JFK lives on. So this November will mark the 50th anniversary of his assassination. And while everyone else in the world is going to be talking about his death, the conspiracy theories, playing the Zapruder film over and over again, we're going to be talking about the ways in which he is still alive. And to introduce that, let's jump over to a little teaser site we just put up with a video on it, and you guys can see just a minute long about what we're going to do this year.
The President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark. It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street.
In our newsroom, and there has been an attempt, as perhaps you know now, on the life of President Kennedy.
A man may die, nations may rise and fall, but an idea lives on.
So An Idea Lives On is a collection of stories from far-flung places around the world, people telling us in their own words how JFK lives on for them, in the Peace Corps, in space, in education, in people with disabilities, in politics, all those things. And so we're just kind of getting stories assembled. I would invite all of you to go to the site and check out Submit a Story if you have a thought about this. There are a great number of stories we are harvesting ourselves and shooting ourselves and making in a certain fashion, and then there are submitted stories, which will also be part of the exhibit as well. So that's something that we're working on now. And that's pretty much it. I think we have just a few more minutes left if there happen to be any questions. Lee, final thoughts?
Ask the experts. We're very excited about this next anidealiveson.org because we've been celebrating anniversary after anniversary of these last 3 years of his presidency, and now his ideas do live on, as I said earlier, and this is a great way to launch them into the future for us. So if you would love to be part of it, we would love, if you have a story to tell or somehow that JFK has influenced your life, it doesn't have to be direct, but let's say you named your child after Kennedy, or there's something that is inspirational to you that he did as president, feel free to submit because it's the people's story. It's not just our story. Go ahead.
Great. Quick question. You're doing really interesting space online. I'm just curious, I haven't been there yet, but what happens in the museum, and have you brought this interactivity and social contribution into the physical space?
We haven't yet. We have a plan right now to take this Idea Lives On idea and put it into the physical space of the museum such that these topics I mentioned, the Peace Corps, education, disabilities, and so forth, are mapped to your course through the museum, and the content will be sent to you via low-energy Bluetooth beacons as you walk. And they'll sort of know where you're standing and serve you. For example, we got Chris, last name, what is his name on the ISS?
Cassidy.
Chris Cassidy is a commander on the International Space Station. He shot a video for us. So if you go to the Kennedy Library Museum and you're looking at the Gemini capsule right there, you'll get Chris's video come up, and then you have this really interesting history and present day kind of matched up in the same moment.
Right, he was actually in space when he did the video, and it's pretty cool because he had a JFK coin floating behind him. So it's exciting. The museum actually takes you through his 1,000 days in office chronologically through video. And over the next couple years, Caroline's husband Ed is very involved in kind of redesigning some of that and bringing it, doing a lot of projections so that we can create more interactive exhibits and changing exhibits. It'll take us a little bit of time because we're a government institution and we're currently closed because of the because of the government shutdown. I'm not, but so we're going to work on this over the next few years, but with the Martin Agency as a partner, we hope to make it more interactive. So it's a great question. Thank you. I'm going to take it back to Ed.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.